Welcome to Comfort Crime with Lindsay Sanchez, a cozy mystery podcast where no actual crimes have been committed. Today, we'll continue Murder on Maple Mountain, a cozy mystery with an amateur sleuth, a second chance romance, and a killer who won't stop until they finished what was started 12 years ago. If this is your first time here, please start with Episode 1, Chapter 1, or feel free to start with the prequel short story, Death at Dogwood Lake. There's a link to both in the show notes. For everyone else, we'll continue to Chapter 8. But first, an update. Drumroll, please. My library holds for the 4th Marlowe murder book just came through. I've been on the wait list for what feels like forever, and now it's finally my turn. If you've been following along, you know that the first 3 books in the series have been exactly what I've been looking for, so I'm going in with high hopes. Will it live up to expectations? Will there be a shocking twist? Will I stay up way too late reading just one more chapter? We'll see. I'll report back next week with all my thoughts and probably some strong opinions about the whodunit. In other news, I've just started a new writing course. Some of the best authors throughout history were constantly learning and growing. And while I'm not necessarily hoping to join their illustrious ranks, I do love learning. But here's the funny thing about writing courses. Learning the thing and translating that into actual writing are 2 very different things. As far as I can tell, there are 3 possible outcomes. I could learn a lot and become a better writer. I could learn a lot and become a worse writer. Apparently, this can happen when people get self-conscious or overthink everything they've learned. Or I could learn a lot and my writing would stay exactly the same. Fingers crossed for outcome number 1. I will keep you posted on whether this turns out to be brilliantly helpful or just an expensive way to develop imposter syndrome. That is all for me this week. I just want to thank you for being here and letting me share my bookish adventures with you. I would love to know what you're reading this weekend. So if you're not on the newsletter, join. And if you are, hit reply and let me know. I am always looking for the next good read. Last time, Georgia discovered the real target might be Rose, the kindest woman in Dogwood. She dug deeper into the widow's past and discovered that the sweet old lady might have more secrets than anyone imagined. Murder on Maple Mountain, Chapter 8. By the time they got to Frank's cabin, the oldest and smallest in the string of homes spread along the mountainside, Georgia's fingers were frozen. She wished for the millionth time that she'd brought a coat, or at least kept Sean's. Stupid Jake, making her feel guilty and weird about wearing it. Now she'd have to remember to raid Sienna's closet, or risk dying of hypothermia. Georgia knocked on Frank's door with aching fingers, then blew into her hands and rubbed them together. "You should have brought in a coat," Rose said, wrapping her hand back through Georgia's arm. Frank opened the door. A tall man, stooped with age and grief. He hunched forward, his head bowed, like he carried the weight of the world. The house behind him empty and dark. Mussed gray hair and red-rimmed eyes made it clear he'd been crying. "Oh, dear," Rose whispered. "It's a good thing we came." "I told you not to come over." Frank started closing the door. "Not tonight." Georgia turned to go. She shouldn't be there. He needed space and rest, and Georgia needed to find out who had killed Ivy and was trying to hurt Rose. "Oh, hush!" Rose pushed past him and turned on the lights, leading him gently to the couch. "I've lost 2 husbands. I know what I'm doing. Now you sit here while I get you something to eat." "I'm going to go." Georgia lingered on the doorstep. "Frank, I'm so sorry for your loss." "Oh, no, you don't." Rose shook her finger from across the room, like Georgia was a naughty schoolgirl trying to get out of homework. "You come sit with Frank while I make him a cup of tea." Frank's grief was palpable. The tension strung through the air, a web of wires Georgia was bound to trip over and make a mess. What could she say that wouldn't make it worse? How could she possibly help? "Okay." Georgia shut the door and picked her way through the collection of antique tables, finding a path to the front room. "Can I ask you some questions?" "Oh, no, dear." Rose poked her head out of the attached kitchen. "Now's not the time." "I like questions," Frank insisted. The scientist he must have once been perked up. "I'd like to help. It's better than sitting here by myself and missing Ivy." "It will upset him, dear." Rose came in, put a cup of tea in Frank's hand, and patted his shoulder. "Best not to even mention it." "Thank you for the tea," Frank said firmly. "But as for becoming upset, I couldn't possibly be more heartbroken than I already am." Georgia stood between the two, Rose silently shaking her head, and Frank alert, attentive. He was like her dad, practical, logical, a man who wanted the truth and was never happier than when he was busy. If something like this had happened to Georgia's mom, or someone thought it had, her dad would want to know. "I think we need to tell him." "No, he'll be too upset. Leave it till tomorrow, or never." Rose went back to the kitchen. "It might be upsetting," Georgia agreed, taking a small step toward Frank. "But if you say you'd like to know, I'll tell you." She moved a stack of newspapers to sit next to him on the couch. "I would want to know if it was someone I loved." "Not that I don't love Ivy." Georgia stumbled over her mistake. "We all loved Ivy." "She was not an easy woman." Frank waved away Georgia's apology. "You didn't know her like I did. No one knew her like I did. If you had, you'd know she was the loveliest woman I've ever met." Yesterday, Georgia would have laughed. In any other situation, she wouldn't have been able to keep a straight face, someone calling Ivy the loveliest woman. But here, in Frank's living room, she couldn't. "Ask me whatever you wish." Frank set the tea on a book-filled table beside the couch. "Okay." Georgia moved a stack of magazines aside so she could sit next to him. "Have you noticed anything strange on Maple Mountain lately?" "No, I'm sorry." Frank folded his arms. "I don't have the patience for vagueness today. You'd better give me your hypothesis first. Then we can discuss the merit together." "Are you sure?" Once Georgia told him. Once she said the words murder and poison, she wouldn't be able to take them back. As smart and as strong as Frank was, a suspicion like that could break a person, especially if they had nowhere to go with it, if no one would believe it and nothing could be done. "Quite," he said. Now, I know you're not hungry, but I want you to eat. Rose brought a cut sandwich in on a plate. I can't. To be honest, I appreciate your kindness and company, but I won't be able to keep it down. Then we'll be here to clean it up. Rose sat on the edge of a chair across from them, a stack of books piled behind her. I'll make you a deal. Georgia had an idea. You eat, I'll talk. Rose pursed her lips, but stayed silent. Frank picked up the sandwich and took a small bite. I think Ivy was poisoned. Georgia paused, holding her breath for his reaction. Surprise, confusion, anger. Please continue, he said, around a bite of sandwich. Like a true scientist, holding judgment till he had more information. Georgia told him everything, exactly as she had for Jake a few hours earlier, and for Officer Briggs right before that. Frank listened, methodically chewing and swallowing. Let me see if I have this straight. Frank put down what was left of his sandwich. You believe Ivy was poisoned, and that the vehicle was Lisa's cake, one that was meant for Rose. You have therefore come to the conclusion that the intended target wasn't Ivy, but, in fact, Rose. Yes. But you have no evidence beyond the lingering smell of bitter almonds, which could suggest cyanide. Right. Georgia shifted on the couch. When he said it like that, it sounded downright silly. A sudden vision of herself, a crime-obsessed girl, trying to make trouble where there wasn't any. It's what the police saw, what Jake must have seen. I'm sorry. Georgia stood. With the weird break-ins and finding Ivy, I think Rose was right. I'm sorry, Frank. Please forget I said anything. I hope this didn't hurt or burden you more. Dear girl, there is unfortunately no earthly way for me to be in more pain. Please don't worry yourself about that. He stood too. There are, however, two things I know that you do not. Firstly, the man who now owns Dogwood Nursery, whose name Rose has asked me to never say in her presence, is currently out of the country. Thank you, Frank, Rose smiled. He has been for at least 2 days, Frank continued. As Lisa insists on selling fresh cakes and bakes them daily with Amelia's and my help, and as we know the whole supply was not poisoned, he took a deep breath. I think it's safe to conclude that if Ivy was poisoned, whoever administered the dose would need to be in the country. So it wasn't flip-flops. George's heart sank. He hadn't been much of a lead, but it was all she'd had. And it had made sense. They'd been fighting over the nursery for years. Maybe Rose had gotten a leg up. Maybe Flip-Flops had gotten tired of dealing with her. As for the second thing, Frank headed to the hallway. Follow me. Rose shrugged and followed behind him, leaving Georgia to bring up the rear. Now, I'm afraid you're barking up the wrong tree with the nursery, as they say, but you might be onto something with the poison. As you mentioned, strange things have been happening on the mountain lately. Last night, I had a little break-in of my own. He led them down the picture-lined hall to a room with a desk littered with letters and one box on the floor. Compared to the rest of the house, it was practically sterile. No knickknacks, paintings, or antique tables anywhere. Just the desk, the letters, and the box. I didn't know what they were after when I interrupted the attempt, but after hearing your story, I have an idea. He picked up the box, slid some letters to the side, and put it on the table. Broken glass, wilted flowers, and a half-eaten cake mingled with bruised apples and scarred summer squash. If my dear Ivy was poisoned, the killer might have been after this. He picked up the neatly packaged cake. How did you get that? Georgia hadn't even considered looking for it, assuming that either the police had it or it was long gone in some commercial park dumpster. The police are still functioning under the assumption that Ivy passed of natural causes. Being the age that she was, with the heart condition she had, there was no suspicion of foul play, present company excluded. Therefore, they had no reason to hold evidence. I was able to salvage this from the scene. Can we test it? This was it. This was the breakthrough Georgia needed to get people to take her seriously. Rose would be safe. Ivy could get justice. We should take it to the police. Frank looked down at Georgia with a frown. They won't listen. I tried to tell them this afternoon. There's no evidence. I see what you mean. Frank's frown deepened. They are not likely to be swayed without reason, which this cake might provide. Frank pulled out the container. Ideally, Ivy would have been given a proper autopsy before her burial. With each word, Frank gained energy, a purpose awakening him. Unfortunate as that may be, we must take our flowers where they bloom and draw any available conclusions from this cake. You can tell from the cake? Not if Ivy was poisoned, but if she was poisoned by the cake? Georgia smiled, Frank's energy infecting her. What you have, my dear girl, is a lot of theories, a lot of assumptions. What we need is facts. Fact number 1, Ivy is dead. He said it slowly, like he was testing the phrase. Ivy is dead, he nodded. Fact number 2, no one has verified the cause of death. With her symptoms matching typical cardiac arrest, combined with her aforementioned age and known heart condition, nothing beyond a cursory investigation was performed by the paramedics. It's reasonable to assume that she died of natural causes. You know how to do it? How to tell if there's cyanide? We'll have to go outside and be extremely cautious. He put the cake back in the box, his eyes gleaming. The fumes will be deadly, but with everything you've mentioned, along with the break-in attempt, I think we're likely to find cyanide. A jar. He carried the box to the front room, gathering supplies as he went. Acid paper. Rose, would you procure the vinegar? I'll stay inside, Rose said, on her way to the kitchen. I'd rather not slip on ice tonight. She handed the bottle of vinegar to Georgia and took off her coat, wrapping it around her. You'd better take my coat, dear. You'll catch your death. Unless you'd rather stay inside with me. I'll take the vinegar. Frank took the bottle from Georgia. You take this old pestle. It's too heavy for the box. Torn, like a child between fighting friends, Georgia had to disappoint one of them. I'll help Frank. She gave Rose a quick kiss on the cheek. We'll be back, and followed him to the back door. One table and 2 chairs sat on a covered and well-lit patio. It stretched into the backyard, the edge mingling with grass and an unmanaged hedge. Surely there had been many mornings when Ivy and Frank had sat in those chairs and waited for the sun to break over the mountain. Put these on. Frank handed Georgia a pair of gloves and a mask. She put them on. Please open the container and stand back. He took a pair of tongs, broke off a piece of the cake, and placed it in the jar, smashing it with the pestle, and poured enough vinegar to cover the mess. Hand me the paper. Georgia grabbed the paper from the box, a little strip. She reached it to his outstretched hand. Stay back. He suspended the strip and secured the lid, setting the jar in the middle of the table. We'll know within the hour. Georgia wasn't cold anymore. The gloves, Rose's coat, and the suspense were enough to keep her warm until they'd know if Lisa's cake was full of poison. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a mystery-loving friend, or consider leaving a review on your favorite podcast player. Most of all, thank you so much for being here today. I loved it, and I'm already excited for next week.